I think they've gone from a period of suppressing the price of gold and silver to keep everyone happy buying US treasuries and US assets and Western assets into suppressing the price so that they can massively drain the shelves of all the physical supply. And this is globally. So you have big money holding down the paper price with leverage, while at the same time accumulating the physical. They're doing that because most people never look past they don't open up the hood and look underneath. They don't look past the price. And so if you can make the price volatile and keep it suppressed under moving averages, volatility and low performance makes no one want to buy it. At the same time, if price and this volatility was any indication of value and demand, then who the hell is draining the world's supply? Why is it the lowest supply in the history of the London Metals Exchange for silver since they started keeping inventory records? Why is it that over 75% of all the silver on the COMEX market that is available for delivery has been delivered over the past 18 months, whereby another way of saying that is the registered stockpile has been bled down by over almost 75%, from 135 million ounces down to 34 million. So it's disappearing. And who's buying it all? Where in one day, one investor can pull 26 million ounces of gold off the COMEX, or 45% of all the kilo bars backing the COMEX mini contract, or 5% of all the 100 ounce gold bars. Who's got this kind of money? And if value was an indication of price, things would be very different than they are, or demand rather was indicative of price. I mean, what you're seeing is the shelves being bled dry through misdirection, through suppression of price. It's the no look pass in basketball. They're suppressing the price, enabling them to drain the world's commodity complex literally to the bone. And then when there's no longer a bid price, then they'll let it go because no one will sell it at these absurd prices. Or when, like, for example, the Russians are talking about issuing, on behalf of the Eurasian content, a new exchange in Moscow that will, as they even came out publicly and said, challenge the manipulation of the COMEX and the London Metals Exchange. All they would need to do is day one, peg gold to $3,000 an ounce and silver to $50 an ounce, and bang, everything would arbitrage eastward. All of it would go that way to collect that huge premium, and the COMEX and the London Metals Exchange would be broken and obsolete forever. And I think that's on the horizon too. That's part of the playbook for the BRICS.
Let's pause for a moment, because what was just described goes far beyond a normal supply and demand story. The first key point is that physical gold and silver inventories appear to be shrinking rapidly, even as prices remain relatively subdued. The argument is that large players may be using paper markets and volatility to distract attention from what's happening underneath the surface. Second, if massive amounts of metal are being removed from major exchanges, then price alone may not be telling the full story. The more important signal could be where the physical metal is moving and who is accumulating it. And finally, if a competing exchange begins offering higher prices for physical delivery, it could challenge the pricing power of the current system. The question isn't just who owns the metal, it's what happens if the world suddenly starts pricing it differently.
Precious metals, gold and silver, first of all, aren't even investment to me. They're wealth. They're wealth that have outlived 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, every pandemic, and are still immutable. They are wealth that are being accumulated by the most well-funded, well-informed, influential, sophisticated traders on the globe, who are draining, literally draining, the supply of all of the gold and silver. And they are misdirecting us with rhetoric and price. The sophisticated money is always 3-4 steps ahead of the public. The public is looking, it's like I talk about skiing. It's one of my favorite things to do. I don't know if you've ever gone skiing, Kia, but when you ski, they teach you to never look at the tips of your skis, look 5 feet out. It's like when you drive a car, you don't look at the emblem on the hood, you look 20, 30, 40, 50 yards in front of you. The same thing with skiing. If you look at your tips, you'll cross them. So you focus your energy down past the tips of your skis so that you can navigate what's coming in front of you instead of keeping your face right here and bang, you run into the tree because you're looking at your tips. So the point of it is that the big money is using the misdirection of price and of rhetoric to accumulate and make everyone who is well read and smart, just not reading maybe the right stuff, or not listening to the right commentators, doesn't decrease their intellect. You know, there's a million things that people are smart with or understand. Not everyone spends the time to understand what's going on here, but the bottom line is this: the biggest money in the world is using that to accumulate and to reposition out of the dollar. Yes. And when the central banks are on the biggest buying spree that they've been on, literally in 50 years of gold and silver, that should tell you something. Yes. When in the third quarter of this last year, over 400 tons were delivered out of the country, sent out of the country to country, and Bloomberg and Reuters surmises it's Russia, Saudi Arabia, China, and India buying it. Well, where have we heard those names before? Oh, yeah, the BRICS. So they came out, 400 tons were sold. That's double the biggest third quarter ever. 700 tons already, over 700 tons for the year. That's bigger than any year since 1967. That's leaving the United States, so off of our exchanges. So the biggest money in the world is using this price to reposition. And either you stick with your recency bias and conventional wisdom, or you trust your gut, you being the people you're talking to. Yes. And you protect yourself the way that the big money, the smart money, the sophisticated money is moving. And, you know, when I own gold and silver, Kia, I hope to God I never need to use it. If I do, damn glad I have it. And it's not just for an emergency. Maybe it's an opportunity, a real good one when the dust settles, real estate or equities or whatever. If not, I give it to my kids. And like I said, there are very few things that have stood the test of time. And where we're going, Kia, in terms of counterparty risk, there are very few things that are not also simultaneously someone else's liability. Think of all the cryptos held on FTX. People lost billions of dollars, right? Bankrupt, insolvent, gone. How about BlackRock and Blackstone, two of the very largest real estate investment trusts in the world? BlackRock, it owns how much of the US property? What did they just do the other day? Suspended all redemptions because too many people have redeemed. Too many people aren't paying their mortgages as rates are rising. There's defaults. And now people who largely are invested in those funds are pension funds. So I told the pension, sorry, you can't redeem anything. So imagine you're 30 years older than you are right now, and you're ready to go sit on a beach. And you invested in US real estate through BlackRock, the biggest company, the biggest hedge fund, safe as hell. Real estate in the US, it couldn't be better. And what did they just tell us? No redemption, sorry. Counterparty risk.
This is where the bigger picture starts coming into focus. Earlier, you learned that physical gold and silver are moving out of Western exchanges and into stronger hands. Now, we're seeing why that matters. The argument isn't just that precious metals are rising in importance. It's that the world's largest and most informed players are quietly repositioning while the public remains focused on short-term price movements. At the same time, concerns about counterparty risk are growing, whether it's banks, funds, or even major financial institutions restricting access when conditions become stressed. If that's true, then the final piece of this puzzle isn't about price at all. It's about what happens when trust in the system itself starts getting repriced. And that's where the last few minutes become the most important part of this entire conversation.
Gold and silver are assets that are not simultaneously anyone else's liability. And that's something to think about at the same time. So not everything boils down to what you can see and quantify right now. Some of it has to be from a historical perspective, another of it has to be we're in uncharted waters, floating aimlessly, and you have to trust your gut. You have to trust your gut. And the reason so few people succeed in investing is because they follow the herd. It's safer, it's easier. But I would submit that you take accountability for everything else you do in your life. from the moment you're able to speak. You pull your little brother's hair, you get in trouble. You drink and drive, God forbid. Hopefully the worst thing that happens is, you get a DWI. You cheat on your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, bad things happen. So why is it that all of these things that we are accountable for, everything we do, we're accountable for, yet maybe the most important thing in the world, protecting our assets, we defer that responsibility to financial advisors? And I'm not going to cast a wide net on financial advisors. That's not fair. But I will say many of them know more and more about less and less till they know everything about nothing. They are singularly mindset focused into the road to retirement is paved only with mutual funds and stock certificates. So I guess I would say unconventional times, call for unconventional thought and action. And looking at gold and silver as an investment is not the right way. Look at it as wealth. And I think it becomes easier to understand why to own it.
What's important to understand is that you've now followed an argument most investors never stop long enough to consider. The focus here wasn't simply on the price of gold and silver, but on the behavior of the people with the most information, the most capital, and the longest time horizons. The claim is that while the public watches short-term volatility, major institutions and central banks are quietly repositioning into assets with no counterparty risk. You've also seen how access to supposedly safe assets can be restricted when financial stress appears. The bigger question going forward isn't whether gold or silver outperform next month, it's what happens if trust itself becomes the scarce asset. And once you start looking at the financial system through that lens, a lot of other pieces begin to fall into place.